Welcome to the debate. I am Jim, stepping in as the advocate today.
And I am Tammy, taking on the role of the dissenter.
So, picture this. You are standing right in the middle of a dense, humid marshland in central Florida.
Right, like total prehistoric wilderness, alligators, cypress trees, muddy swamp buggy tracks everywhere.
Exactly. It feels like you are just a million miles away from beach fun or, the areas of interest and year-round sunshine people usually associate with the state.
Yeah, the air is thick, the mosquitoes are relentless, and you feel entirely cut off from civilization.
But, mathematically speaking, you could hop in a car and hit the ocean in less than an hour. Which brings us to our focus today, the famous adage that you are never 60 miles to the beach anywhere in Florida.
Right. It is this incredibly pervasive geographical claim. You see it on postcards, it is touted in real estate brochures pitching affordability, and it is just repeated as geographical gospel.
Yeah, so today we are asking a very simple question. Based on our research, is the 60-mile rule a scientific, geographical truth thanks to Florida's unique peninsular structure?
Or is it just a tourism-driven myth? Something that completely falls apart under rigorous cartographic scrutiny.
Well, I will be arguing that it is functionally and scientifically accurate. If you look at the raw data, the official points of inaccessibility and the state's incredibly narrow peninsular geometry totally back this up.
And I will argue that the mathematical reality of the northern borders definitively shatters this rule. When you factor in the massive landmass of the Florida Panhandle and the actual realities of human geography, the claim is exposed as an inaccurate heuristic. It is a clever marketing myth, not a cartographic law.
Okay, let us start right at the heart of the matter. To figure out if you are ever more than 60 miles from the coast, we first have to locate the absolute most inland point of the state.
Right, which in geography is called the point of inaccessibility, or a PIA.
Yeah, exactly, the PA.
Wait, hold on. Before we just toss out acronyms, let us explain how a point of inaccessibility is actually calculated, because it is not just, drawing an X in the middle of a map.
No, it is not.
The easiest way to visualize a PIA is to imagine inflating a circular balloon inside the map of Florida. You keep inflating this circle until the edges of the balloon touch the coastline on multiple sides and just cannot expand any further. The exact dead center of that fully inflated balloon is your point of inaccessibility.
Right, it is the single coordinate on a landmass that is furthest from the sea. It is a strict computational geometry problem.
Exactly.
And according to the research, the official point of inaccessibility for Florida is located right in the marshland of the Avon Park Air Force Range.
In Polk County, right?
Yep, right on the eastern shores of Lake Arbuckle in Polk County. This is dead in the belly of central Florida, which, by the way, is a fantastic area. The benefits from living in central Florida, from Ocala to Orlando, are huge.
Oh, definitely. It is going so fast.
You have incredible affordability, tons of 55-plus housing options in the central part of the state, and just amazing access to the state of Florida state parks.
Yeah, the state of Florida state parks down there are gorgeous. But back to the coordinates.
Right. So that point in Avon Park, the exact coordinates place it precisely 54.2 miles from the sea.
Which is under the 60-mile threshold.
Well under it. And look at the macro structure of the state. The peninsula is roughly 150 miles wide in central Florida. As you move south toward Miami, it tapers off dramatically, narrowing to just 90 miles wide.
So it eventually narrows to a point.
Exactly. Because the absolute furthest a person can be from the coast within this massive peninsular landmass is mathematically calculated at a maximum of 54.2 miles. The geometric reality proves the claim. If you draw a straight line from the most remote inland swamp to the ocean, the math undeniably proves you are within 60 miles of the sea.
Okay, that is a mathematical sleight of hand.
How is it a sleight of hand? The math literally dictates—
Because you are entirely ignoring the northern half of the map. Yes, the Avon Park calculation of 54.2 miles is mathematically sound for the peninsula. But you are selectively representing only the peninsula while completely ignoring the state's true legal boundaries in the north.
Well, I wouldn't call it ignoring. I am focusing on the defining landmass of the state.
But you cannot say anywhere in Florida and then arbitrarily chop off the top third of the map just because it ruins your argument.
I am not chopping it off.
Look at the official geographic data from the Florida Department of State. The widest point in northern Florida spans an incredible 361 miles from the Atlantic Ocean in the east all the way to the Perdido River in the west.
Sure, the panhandle is wide, but
If you analyze the northern border, specifically near the intersection of the Florida, Georgia, and Alabama state lines, about 27 miles southeast of Dothan, Alabama, the map completely breaks down.
I mean, that is an extreme edge case.
We have coordinates there that are over 74 miles from the Gulf of Mexico and up to 210 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. You cannot claim anywhere in Florida if your defense relies on excluding an entire distinct region.
Okay, you are treating the panhandle like it carries the exact same geographical weight as the peninsula, but let us look at the actual distribution of the land.
It is land inside the state borders.
Yes, but the total land area of Florida is 53,625 square miles. The vast, overwhelming majority of that landmass exists within the peninsula itself. The Avon Park calculation isn't just some arbitrary point. It represents the true geographic maximum for the bulk of the state.
But a rule is a rule.
When we talk about geographical rules of thumb, we are talking about the dominant defining characteristics of a region. By focusing on the peninsula, the 60-mile rule is a highly accurate representation of the state's unique shape. To discard a rule that holds true for like 90% of the state's geography because of a mathematical deviation at the extreme northern border feels like missing the forest for the trees.
Wow, I have to stop you right there because the Panhandle is not a minor statistical anomaly. It is a massive, populated geographical area belonging to the broader Gulf coastal plain.
I am not denying its geology is distinct.
It has its own distinct rolling hills, its own pine forest ecosystems. If you're standing in a town near the Alabama border, 75 miles inland from the Gulf of Mexico, you are legally, culturally, and geographically in Florida. You pay Florida taxes, right?
Yes, obviously.
You have a Florida driver's license. A geographical rule must apply to the defined borders of the entity it describes. If a resident in the northern panhandle is 75 miles from the water, then the absolute statement that you are never more than 60 miles from the beach anywhere in Florida is factually false.
All right, let us pivot slightly because we are getting entirely bogged down in the starting points. You know, where someone is standing inland.
Because that dictates the distance.
Fair, but I want to transition to how we are defining the target destination. You are assuming the coast is a clean, sharp line drawn with a ruler. But measuring Florida's edge is actually like measuring a fractal.
Ah, you are bringing in the coastline paradox.
I absolutely am because it fundamentally changes how we measure distance to the ocean. For those unfamiliar, the coastline paradox is the counterintuitive geographical fact that the closer you look at a coastline, the longer it gets.
Right.
Imagine you are measuring a coast with a ruler that is 100 miles long. You lay it end to end, skipping over all the little bays and inlets, and you get a relatively short total distance.
But if you measure that exact same coast with a 1-inch ruler, suddenly you have to trace around every single rock, every tiny tidal river, and every little cove.
Exactly. The measurement becomes exponentially longer. Geography literally changes depending on the size of the ruler you use.
And Florida is basically the poster child for this paradox.
Exactly. Why? Because the state essentially sits on a giant porous limestone sponge. Over millions of years, water has dissolved this karst topography, creating a ridiculously jagged, fractured edge.
True, the research from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says Florida has 8,436 miles of tidal shoreline.
Which is second only to Alaska. The sheer density of these tidal shorelines, barrier islands, bays, and coastal inlets practically reaches inland to meet you. Even if you're up in that northern panhandle area you mentioned, the functional distance to a coastal water body connected to the Gulf is incredibly short.
A bay or a sound, maybe.
Yes, but the geometry of the state's fractal coastline essentially guarantees you will hit tidal saltwater within 60 miles almost anywhere.
Okay, that is a fascinating geographical mechanism, but it completely ignores the actual language of the claim we are debating.
How so? Saltwater is saltwater.
The adage specifically says, 60 miles from the beach or the ocean. It does not say 60 miles from a brackish tidal inlet. Yes, the Gulf of Mexico is technically a sea of the Atlantic, and yes, Florida has over 8,000 miles of shoreline. But functional reality matters to human beings?
I mean, cartographically speaking.
You cannot put a beach towel down on a tangled mangrove root. A tidal inlet surrounded by mudflat is not what people mean when they say the beach.
But you cannot separate the ecosystem.
Let us look at the center of the state, where you argue the rule holds up perfectly. If someone lives in central Florida, near Claremont, public geographical disputes in our research reveal the everyday reality of this. A resident in Claremont is geometrically right in the middle of the peninsula.
Very close to the center, yes.
Yet, practically speaking, it is often a 70-mile drive to reach even a lesser-known beach, and up to 90 or 100 miles to reach a famous sandy beach like Cocoa Beach or Daytona Beach. The coastal line paradox is mathematically brilliant, but finding a proper sandy shore where you can actually swim often drastically exceeds the 60-mile threshold.
See, you are conflating geometric distance with human infrastructure, and that is a critical error in how we understand geography. The 60-mile rule is based on absolute straight-line distance. It is measured radially. We are talking about distance as the seagull flies, not by the winding, artificial path of highway routing.
But human beings aren't seagulls, Jim. We have to use the roads.
Yes, but you cannot blame the map for the pavement. Florida's interior hydrology is totally unique in North America. We have nearly 8,000 lakes that are 10 acres or larger scattered across the interior. We have massive, dominant natural features like the 700-square-mile Lake Okeechobee and the 1.5 million-acre Everglades.
Right.
You simply cannot build a perfectly straight 60-mile interstate across a 1.5 million-acre river of grass. You would sink. Our road networks are forced to aggressively circumvent these incredible natural obstacles.
Which adds dozens of miles to any trip to the coast.
Exactly. So, yes, it might take a resident in Claremont 90 miles on their odometer to reach Daytona Beach because the interstate has to curve wildly around lakes and conservation areas, but geographical facts are not determined by asphalt. The straight-line measurement from their coordinate to the coastline remains mathematically true, regardless of how long it takes their car to navigate around a swamp. The rule is 60 miles to the beach, not 60 miles of highway.
I am not blaming the map. I am questioning the utility of a geographic rule of thumb if it fundamentally contradicts the human experience. A rule designed for human consumption is meaningless if it only works for birds and cartographers.
It is not meaningless. It defines the nature of the landmass they live on.
If a resident living in Gainesville has to drive an hour and a half to see the ocean, telling them that they are geometrically within 60 miles of the coast offers absolutely no functional value to their lives.
It offers geographical truth.
It defines a technicality. And frankly, we see this kind of promotional heuristic all the time in Florida's history. It is literally part of the state's DNA to market its environment. Look at the research on St. Petersburg.
You mean the sunshine claim?
Exactly. The city famously claims to have 361 days of sunshine a year. It is a brilliant marketing slogan that even earned them a Guinness World Record back in the day.
A well-deserved one, I might add.
Yet, paradoxically, Men's Health once ranked St. Petersburg as one of the saddest cities in America.
Well, I mean, that is just one magazine's methodology.
The point is, these statistics, like the 361 days of sunshine or the 60 miles to the beach, they operate beautifully as tourism marketing. They evoke a feeling of perpetual coastal paradise. But when we subject them to rigorous scrutiny, factoring in both the 75-mile straight-line distances in the northern panhandle and the 90-mile driving realities of the central peninsula, the 60-mile rule functions purely as a myth.
Well, I fundamentally disagree that it is just a myth. When we evaluate the physical geography of the Florida Peninsula, straight-line radial measurements absolutely validate the state's famous coastal proximity. The math just does not lie.
Even when the math ignores the north.
The official point of inaccessibility rests at exactly 54.2 miles from the sea in Avon Park. When you factor in the sheer density of the state's 8,436 miles of fractal tidal shoreline, and you understand why the porous limestone creates such a jagged coast, the geometric truth holds up perfectly. The 60-mile rule beautifully captures the scientific reality of a landmass uniquely enveloped by the ocean.
And my position remains that while the math in the center of the peninsula is precise, applying a blanket rule to an entire state simply fails the test of reality. The 74 to 75-mile distances in the northern panhandle near the Alabama and Georgia borders definitively break the 60-mile threshold, plain and simple.
If you insist on treating the panhandle equally to the peninsula.
Furthermore, the lived realities of human geography, the actual distance people must drive around massive lakes and swamps just to reach a functional sandy beach, render the 60-mile rule a technical illusion. It is born far more of promotional enthusiasm than applicable cartography.
Well, despite our disagreement on the semantics of measurement, I think where we absolutely converge today is on the underlying marvel of Florida's geography.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether a straight-line ruler says 54 miles in Polk County or a winding highway says 90 miles from Claremont, we both agree that Florida possesses a remarkably narrow geography. It has a unique hydrological ecosystem that connects almost all of its interior to the coast far more intimately than any other state in the country. The ocean fundamentally dictates the climate, the land, and the infrastructure.
I completely agree with that. The sheer volume of water shaping the interior is incredible. And this really highlights how understanding simple geographical trivia requires a delicate balancing act. You have to weigh strict point-to-point cartographic data against vast regional distinctions.
Like the Gulf Coastal Plain versus the southern swamps.
Exactly. And ultimately, you have to reconcile the map with the lived reality of human geography.
There is definitely much more to explore in the research regarding Florida's unique coastal ecosystems, its points of inaccessibility, and just the fascinating ways we try to measure our world. We will leave it to the listener to decide which measurement holds more weight in today's discussion, the geometric center of the peninsula or the extreme borders of the panhandle.
It always comes back to how we try to contain the natural world with our artificial tools.
Exactly. You start out trying to measure a room with a rigid tape measure, and you end up standing in a humid marshland, realizing that where the land truly ends and the water begins is wonderfully, stubbornly complex. Thank you for listening to Sunshine and Square Feet, and we'll see you on the next episode.